My Hero Academia has always been an easy shonen to hate on. Despite how well produced and popular it is in the community, it gets treated like the little bro of shonens. And part of that may be the fact that the manga art derives from Michelangelo himself, and the anime is an NFT. But besides that and the fan base, the reason I kept hearing the show get hate was because it had one glaring issue that I mentioned in my last video, which is it felt like there were no stakes involved and nobody would ever die. Characters rarely died when they should have, and the villains barely felt like a threat for a very long time. Now, I'll be the first one to say that this is a surface level issue, and nothing that is technically wrong with the show. Even without major deaths, it had compelling and heartwarming moments. Not everything has to be as stressful as JJK to be a good anime, and though I critiqued it, its animation was really good at times. So low stakes and wanting people to die is a very personal issue and not something that is the biggest technical critique. But it's real. Multiple friends I've talked to mentioned that they dropped the show for this reason and basically called it soft, which I can't blame them for. As much as I defend the show, this is an issue that I've always felt, likely because of other shonens that I've witnessed, whether it's Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, or the new age shonens that are really more so seinens. There's tons of deaths, and they don't just happen for the sake of it, but points in the plot where it makes sense and progresses the overall story. The only shonen that really gets away without those deaths is One Piece, and that's because it's a masterclass of world building, character depth, and writing as a whole. Yeah, I know the glazing is crazy, but those deaths aren't really necessary in the show, and we understand the crew probably won't die, at least for a very long time. Now for My Hero, don't get me wrong, it has a solid world and good writing, but deaths are kind of necessary. When you're telling me that these powerful villains will stop at no cost and you just lost your biggest hero, I'm expecting a lot more deaths.
Oh, but Cash, a death did happen.
Alright, you know what? This is actually post-editing. I will give you Sir Night-Eye's death, and I will give you Twice's death, but there is one that I will not give you. Midnight? I mean, someone called the horny police. I guess I could blame Horikoshi for this one, but who animated this? This is supposed to be a character's death, not a Mineta wet dream. Anyways, those are just two examples of deaths that have technically happened but didn't have much impact. And what makes it even worse to me is when they're fighting the literal strongest villain, somehow Dr. Dre's Beats over here is surviving. And it's worse because he's literally calling them side characters in the dialogue, which they are, but they still smoke, bro? Come on. So even though the villains would clearly get stronger and have really intriguing backstories, which is really what pulled me back into the show, it barely felt like they were a threat. I was never worried for the heroes going into a fight, and the last thing I expected was for them to actually die. At least until this episode. Even after all my defense for the show, I was so ready to give up on My Hero Academia, and then they dropped this absolute banger of an episode that changes everything. So of course, some spoilers ahead, so be wary of that, but I highly recommend catching up to it. Now this death hit like goosebumps level of emotion, which I never expected from My Hero. I was never the biggest Bakugou fan because honestly he was a dickhead for no reason, and Deku was nice to him for no reason at all. Like, bro, relax, you are not a tsundere love interest. But then there was that episode with Vigilante Deku where Bakugou talked him out of continuing this run, and he admitted the only reason he acted that angrily towards him was because he wanted to push him away. He was jealous of him even though he knew he had no powers, because Deku was relentless. They both made it into UA, even though again, Deku had no power. So in reality, Bakugou wasn't a tsundere in a slice of life. He was a product of his environment and aware enough to understand so, which made this send-off even more emotional than it already was. And all my emotional attachment to Bakugou aside, this death serves so many purposes that I was begging for prior. Mainly, as I mentioned in this video, it made the villains a real threat. After this, anything can happen, and I feel like there's actual stakes at hand now. This man Shigaraki fought the top student students and top heroes, but still came out on top is a little bit too OP right now, but we'll see how that goes. As for Bakugou himself, it built up the character tenfold, who prior was mostly an annoying brat. But now I can look at this episode alone and say, I finally get him. His position and power and want to be like Deku and All Might. Bakugou holds this immense amount of guilt, feeling responsible for All Might losing his power, and knowing that his best friend slash childhood rival has that power now cannot be an easy thing to deal with. But actions speak loudest, and Bakugou proved that by being a real hero. He put himself on the line knowing that Deku or All Might would have done the same, and it was storyboarded beautifully. I mean, for one, he speed blitzed the hell out of dude, and two, he had his moment with All Might asking for the signature, and made this even more poetic of a moment as the card fell and it was revealed he lost the fight. I was lucky enough to avoid this as a spoiler, so it genuinely shocked me when it actually happened. But shock value aside, this was the best possible way to send a character off. The level of complexity being a hero who wanted to keep up with his friend and live up to his idol, but constantly falling short. He had a heart as great as both of them and even understood that the gap between them was getting wider. But that didn't stop him from being a hero and fighting when he needed to the most. I missed that earlier, and it's not something I could just look past now. Bakugou is truly a well-written anime character. Finally, I learned a lot from this episode alone regarding early judgment, and that is sometimes you just need to let the show cook. One Piece is the greatest example of patience, something that takes way too much patience, but it's still great when you have some, because while there are not a lot of deaths in the backstories, there's still a great overall story, and something happens, I mean, about 600 episodes in, but it is an impactful death. So I could easily have made the same judgment to One Piece early on and said, oh well, nobody's really dying, but eventually it happens and it was pretty impactful, as opposed to shows like JJK where I'm worried every episode for characters. It's nice and honestly more shocking when it happens in a show like this where I'm really not expecting it. And it makes me look forward to the future of it even more because I cannot imagine Deku's reaction to the whole thing. In my head, I'm getting Gon and Pito flashbacks. Even though I don't think that would be Deku's approach, it would be justified and pretty dope to watch. Regardless, I'm really glad that I stuck with the show, and like I'll always say, I'm looking to get proven wrong. I think people have a misconception about my critiques. Any critique I have about a show is something that they can usually improve upon. I'm not just hating for the sake of hating as much as some of y'all like to do. Well, besides Rent a Girlfriend, I gave up on that a while ago. But even though I was nicer than most people about my hero and kept up with it, I can admit that I was wrong, because I genuinely would have never guessed that Horikoshi kills off that important of a character. And again, I'm not Arthur grasping my fist because I was wrong about the show. I'm more like a little kid in an ice cream shop. This death made for an Attack on Titan plot twist kind of experience, which is one of my favorite things about anime. The fact that it can still surprise me with its writing after I've seen so many of them. But keeping up with MHA feels like I invested in a freaking stock that blew up. I'm still in awe of how good this episode was and how drastically it shifts my view of the entire show. So if you take away anything from this video, just give some shows time to cook. I feel like nowadays we watch the first 3 episodes of one and immediately judge the entire thing. But My Hero just proved the capability of a single episode and the best way to send a character off. Bakugou might be the best written tsundere. It's extremely hot, so I'm going to try to wrap up this outro. Thank you to anyone who made it this far. I've been working on this video for too long. I wanted to release it like whenever the episode dropped, which I think was like 2 weeks ago now. But I've been caught up, honestly, just, you know, living a life, which unfortunately sometimes I have. But when I don't have a life, I could work on these videos. And I appreciate anyone who sticks around and any of you in this community. That is confusing. I know it's confusing. I see people do this where they have a consistent Discord, a consistent upload schedule, all types of things, and then I'm here dropping like whenever I feel like it. And I want to get better at that. It's not something I'm proud of. I need to be more consistent with this, but at the same time, I don't want to force out content. And besides that, just wanted to tell you guys, go watch any movie out right now, specifically 2 of them. Twisters is amazing. I mean, it's so good. I've never been filled with American pride as much as I have when watching Twisters, and if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, trust me, it's intense the whole time. The CGI is amazing in it, and it's just an overall good movie. And Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't need more promo. You see Hugh and Ryan going on like every other press tour they can, because it's really heartfelt to them. And I think it overall, as comedic as it was, is a nice sort of send off. I think that these are, I mean, hopefully Hugh's last time playing Wolverine, but you never know. It's such a meta movie. If you like Deadpool humor, you're gonna love Deadpool 3. And if you don't, then just don't watch it, I guess. But it's a really good movie to me. I think they killed it. And the whole Marvel scene is crazy right now. RDJ as Doom, all that type of stuff. But yeah, let me know what I should be checking out in the comments down below. What you guys think about this video, and yeah, any other comments, just leave down below. Thank you for watching, and I might see you in the next one.